Ladies and gentlemen, I come before you this evening because a lot of things have been said about me in the media the past few days, and unfortunately my appearance on the Sunday show the other day with little Chuck Todd, who doesn't really seem to want to put me in the best light when I am out there trying to talk about the important issues of the day, like this climate that is on fire, the fact that we have a student debt crisis that is growing exponentially every day, endless wars overseas, endless wars at home against the working class. We still are dealing with the fact that we do not have real criminal justice reform in this country, hence the 60-year anniversary of marching on Washington, which I did do, by the way, even though the Clintons tried to pretend like I wasn't actually out there marching on Washington, and of course, supporting Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as I still do to this day. For those of you who are here and want to learn a little bit more about what it is that we're fighting for, well, you've come to the right place. I did not exactly make the best impression on TV the other day, and I wanted to come on here and correct a few things. Number one, I am a fierce supporter of universal health care. It is a human right, and it is the biggest impediment to working people succeeding in this country today. So I want to reiterate that point, that I do support universal health care for every man, woman, and child in this country. That is number one. Number two, we are living in an existential crisis in the environment. We are seeing record heat waves, major storms, and endless plight for countless people who seriously cannot afford to live, much less deal with the ramifications of big storms. We must deal with the reality that people cannot afford to live because we do not have a living wage. We can no longer deny these realities when it comes to unionizing in this country. I'm very proud to see that steps are being taken by, in very small doses, this current administration's right to allow unionization. But we simply cannot accept a future where we are going to crush unions. That is for the days of Ronald Reagan, not for the days of today. In addition, we have to recognize that the youth in this country are in very deep trouble economically, and they are demanding new potential future that involves them having the opportunity to go to school and not be in crippling debt for the rest of their lives. We cannot just cancel student debt. We must make public colleges and universities tuition-free, period. Criminal justice reform While many think it's a difficult task to obtain, we can not deny that if we simply use the stroke of the executive pen, we can decriminalize cannabis. Frankly, we could decriminalize all drugs, and we can expunge nonviolent drug offender records to allow them to integrate back into society. We have to deal with the reality that endless war is a waste of time, money, resources, and innocent lives. We cannot deny nor ignore the crises that are facing our country today in so many different places, whether it is in East Palestine, Ohio, Kalamazoo, Michigan, Maui, Hawaii, and many, many other places in between. With the soon coming hurricane that is going to devastate the state of Florida, it is going to be just as bad as the Hurricane Hillary, no pun intended, the hurricane that just hit California. I come here this evening to mention all of these things because, as you all know, I am a very big supporter of working class people in America. They have been suffering for far too long. And it is at this moment that I recognize that some of the things I may have said on TV the other day are simply not true. If there is one person who is running for president of the United States right now who embodies all of the policies and the energy that the country desperately needs right now, there is no question who that person is. That person has been at my side since I got into this ridiculous political fight back in the summer of 2015, thinking that I could start a political revolution in America. And who knows, maybe we're not that far away from it at this point. But that person who has stood by my side for many, many years has fought valiantly for the working people of this country, and especially working people of color, who have always felt the short end of the stick when it came to opportunity in this country. And on the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, I am here today to let you know that I am rescinding my endorsement of President Biden and changing it to that of Dr. Cornel West. Now, I know a lot of you are wondering, why would I make such a dramatic decision here tonight? Well, the truth is, our country is going to hell. And no more obvious is that than with current President Joe Biden somehow, some way, losing in the polls to Donald Trump. Now, as you can see, I am an old man. I have done my best to try to change this country for the better, but I am certainly in no position to run for president again. I simply don't have the energy, and I'm now going to sleep at a more respectable time of about 8 p.m. every night. Lord knows at this stage of my life I need to get rest. But a lot of you out there have a lot more life to live, and you are very concerned about your future. I'm concerned about your future, and I am very concerned about what our current president and his administration are doing for the working people of this country. And they are simply not doing enough. In fact, if they were doing even slightly enough, we would not be in this predicament of seeing another possibility of a President Donald Trump in the White House again, even if he has to run from a jail cell. Think about how crazy that sounds. So I am here to tell you that if you are considering supporting a candidate for president of the United States who most aligns with my ideals and my policies that I have been espousing for the better part of a decade, I would definitely recommend giving Dr. West your support. He could certainly use a lot of it right now. And as far as I'm concerned, I know the Democrats are going to hate me for saying this, but if in fact the needle is moved to the populist left where it belongs, and Dr. West is able to garner a lot of support and a lot of momentum, I'd like to believe that the Democratic Party will have no choice but to move to the populist left themselves to avoid losing to Donald Trump and the GOP in 2024. There are many great things that this nation is capable of doing, and I truly believe that that is possible, but it will not be if we stay on the same course that we're stuck on right now. So make sure that you check out Dr. Cornel West, his policies, what he's fighting for, and the help that he needs in order to become a viable candidate, regardless of party, in the 2024 election. Should he become viable, he will change the course of history. And I look forward to seeing him do that. Lord knows at this time in my life, I should be taking the type of chances that the American people desperately need. I cannot sit on the sideline, and I will not pretend that we are heading in the right direction anymore. So, with all due respect to my good friend Joe and to the Democratic Party, we need to have a political revolution in this country, and that simply will not happen unless we are supporting the right candidate at the right time. Get out there, support Dr. Cornel West. Thank you all very much.
And we're live!
Hello! La la la. Hello all, welcome. It is Monday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
Not Bernie.
No, not anymore.
That was a long pontification by Bernie. I guess we'll get a bunch of clips out of that one piece, yes?
Maybe we will. Oh, look who's here. Look who's here.
And Lulu.
Lulu's here. So, yes.
Yeah, so that was our sort of dream scenario wherein Bernie would do what we would want, which would be endorse Dr. West. So we just sort of played that out.
Yes. Well, some people think it was... Thank you very much, Double K. And yes, if you are considering supporting our channel, remember, YouTube doesn't really like us anymore.
Well, right. We're not guys. We're demonetized at least until November or something. Is that what it is?
November 1st, apparently, is when it's going to be.
I don't understand any of that. Maybe I never will. Why? I don't understand it. But I know somebody basically did that to us. I just don't understand how the whole system works.
Well, we know who you think it is, but we don't have to get
yeah, no.
So it is what it is. But if you are thinking about contributing to our channel, if you like the entertainment that we just provided, Lord knows if we do make a clip out of this, it's probably...
You'll get a couple, because that's way too long for one clip. I think you get a whole TikTok of you endorsing Cornell. It would be amazing and fun.
Also pretty funny. But Cash App, $Gen Change. Make sure that you get over there, make any contribution that you can. It's certainly appreciated. And of course, if you are considering becoming a patron, which of course you can do, go to patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter.
It's helpful.
It's
really helpful, guys.
It is helpful. And so as a result,
we're low maintenance, but we're trying to be, get better, and it's hard. I mean, it's not what we do for a living. And the truth is we only do a couple shows a week. So some of the people that do it every day, obviously it's more what they do, but yeah, it really helps for us to be able to pay some people to help us. I'm too tech challenged. He really is too.
Yeah, we're losing several $100s a month, even for our small channel, from the revenue that we should be generating, but for whatever reason, I know our content is highly controversial, let me tell you. And so
we'll just call it a Gen moment.
Yes, a Gen moment. $5 gets you the Lulu sticker. $10 will get you the Lulu sticker and the Last Mansion Parliamentarian bumper sticker, because I can assure you this is somebody that Bernie is not going to endorse a president, but perhaps the No Labels Party is very gung-ho on doing that. And for those who donate $25 or more, you get yourself a lovely Gen Change jersey.
I'm quite certain if Joe Manchin was on the No Labels Party, it's not going to be with the parliamentarian as his running mate.
Well, he would certainly improve his chances if he were to do that.
Well, I don't even know who he is or anything really about her, and I'm sure I would like her more than him. Although I shouldn't say that necessarily. Yeah, I don't know that. Maybe she's horrible.
So our guest of the evening, Stephen Meza, is going to be here in about 10 minutes. The truth is, a lot of people are looking at Bernie and wondering, well, why is he going on the Sunday shows and, talking politics? Obviously, he's still out there fighting the good fight for the cause. There's no question that that does matter. But the reality is they're going to bring up the fact that Cornel West is running for president, and he's running outside of the two-party system. And when it comes to the closest, most influential surrogates that Bernie had on his campaign both times, to me, it's Dr. Cornel West and Nina Turner. You can go one direction or the other, but to me, there was no one who had greater impact, influence, and frankly, likability. For anybody who's ever heard Dr. Cornel West on the stump, he is pretty awe-inspiring, to say the least. And it's easy to see why. But it's also easy to see why the powers that be are freaking out about him running for president right now. They're not really freaking out about Marianne Williamson or RFK running for president, because they're running within the system that they can control. Dr. West is running it outside of that system. And regardless of what they will do to attempt to circumvent it, and we know they will, clearly what he's doing is drawing attention away from the two-party system, which is the last thing either side wants. The GOP will certainly be okay with it because from their perspective, it's going to actually help them, at least in their mind, when it comes to the general election next year.
I don't think it really will. Like, I don't think it'll help. I really don't. I know people would like to think that someone like Cornel West is a spoiler. And I've said it many, many times. The majority of people that would vote for him would not vote before they would vote for Joe. So it's not taking, that's the people really think. Like, they're so entitled and presumptive, the blue or who, no matter who people, they're so entitled that they actually not only believe that it's presumed that Joe is the lesser of two evils, they just presume that, like, of course he is. Well, of course he is. But they just presume that any other vote would, of course, go to Joe. Like, it's just so entitled. It really speaks volumes as to why their head is up their ass and they can't get out of their own way.
Yeah, I think that even if you're not asking, and this is one thing about Bernie's loyalty that a lot of people also have to remember, is that he endorsed Joe well before Cornel West got into this race. Now, that doesn't mean that Bernie was going to endorse Cornel if that was, in fact, what ended up happening. The fact of the matter is, though, the one candidate who is running for president unequivocally on Bernie's message is Dr. Cornel West. And Bernie Sanders, whether you're willing to admit it or not, is a political independent. And he has been for a long time.
He's not acting like that. Like, right now, he's being a lapdog for the Dems. And it's very clear. It isn't that, like you said, it isn't so much that he endorsed Joe because Cornel wasn't in the race, right? It was how early and for nothing. So that's screams more to me that somebody whispered in his ear, we're really concerned that you better get on this really quick. We can't afford to have anything go down. Like they just want, and I think really what it came down to was just putting the kibosh on having a primary.
Yeah, and that's exactly what, friend of the show, you don't like my music? I fully expected every Democrat to endorse Joe. Yes. But I expected the progressives to at least make some demands. And you know what? Yes, again.
And same with the unions coming out and endorsing Joe as if there's not even a primary. I mean, it would be one thing if there weren't people that were running in a primary, but there are. So the fact that they're all pretending there isn't, which, you know, is what I would expect them to do. But it's just, that to me is what bothers me. I would not necessarily say that once Bernie had endorsed Biden that I would think, oh yeah, switch over and endorse Cornel West. I would never expect him to do that because the truth is he's a Democrat. He's with them. And whatever, but it was how early and just for nothing. It was really like just falling in line.
And even if this is the case, Colinella, what a lot of people need to remember, and is very important, is that Joe Biden's governance is leading us directly to that.
I would argue
directly
we're there.
To it.
I would argue we're there.
Yeah. So why do you think
we're there?
So why do you think Trump is leading in the polls right now, and he's potentially facing jail time while he's got 4 indictments against him? And regardless of whether it is, and here's my theory on this. I have 2 thoughts about Trump's indictments. Number one, yes. Has he committed crimes? 100%. Is it politically motivated? 1,000%. And you know why no one gives a damn? Because this is a witch hunt to get him taken down.
I hate that. Please stop saying witch hunt.
It is a witch hunt.
No, it isn't a witch hunt. Please stop saying that. It's offensive to people that I know that are witches. And by the way, that it like mocks a historical situation that was legitimate when in fact Trump is a guilty, corrupt person who is being prosecuted.
All right, so fair enough. So my point being is that the reason I truly believe that it's like everyone looking around saying, how are people still supporting Donald Trump? Blah, 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 blah. And all I'm thinking is, if Donald Trump was being treated the exact same way that everyone else on Capitol Hill, starting with our Congresswoman, who is an absolute cheat when it comes to the criminal justice system, she's an inside trader of the highest order in countless amounts of money that you can't wrap your head around, including war profiteering.
Should set her up with like some sort of cage match with Martha Stewart. That would be freaking hilarious.
To me, if ones want to know why people are just so ready, willing, and able to say the hell with it, let's take Trump again, this is why.
It's sort of like when people are saying that somebody's a spoiler, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, you cannot spoil what's already been rotten.
and you're not even attempting to on
right. You have it up. Well, that's and that's the thing. You want my vote. I really do have like a list of demands.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good list of demands, and I would take a handful of those things.
And that's why right now, more than anything else, if you want to talk about what the progressives, if you want to call them that, are not actually doing right now to make those demands of the president is extremely weak. This is as weak of an incumbent that we have seen now listen, I think George W. Bush in 2004 could have been defeated if Wesley Clark was the nominee. Instead, they got John Kerry, but I digress. This is the weakest incumbent since Jimmy Carter. And so as a result, you now have the opportunity. This is when you actually step on the throat of the president and say, if you want our support, you want to make sure that you win. These are the concessions.
Because they don't.
If he was up on Trump by 15 points, they would have no leg to stand on. It would just look like, oh, well, he's going to win re-election, so what's the big deal?
He's going to lose.
Right now, he will lose.
Honestly, he's going to lose because they're not going to do anything. They're going to just still sit there and fearmonger about Trump over and over again instead of doing anything. You will lose.
Yeah.
It's that simple, and it has nothing to do with Cornel West. Because personally, I wouldn't vote. Like, Joe hasn't done anything to make me vote for him. I won't vote for Trump, but I won't vote for Joe.
You got to ask yourself that question, and and again,
do something.
So people will make a lot of different statements about, what we can do here in the state of Florida in terms of our vote, in terms of our decision making, because we are a red state. For people that are living in states that are swing, let's say Georgia, which may not even be a swing state by the time the election rolls around, but let's say Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, Virginia. People are going to have tougher decisions to make regarding their vote. But that doesn't mean that you should not be fighting with all of your might to make them come to you for their vote. The reason this continues and we're spiraling out of control, and Dr. West has said this as much, it's like we can't stay on this hamster wheel. This is exactly why a outside threat, whether it is electorally or through the labor movement, something's got to give. And if something's going to give, it's got to happen sooner rather than later. Even if we jokingly put this clip out there and it generates a lot of attention, and God willing, it gets so viral, it actually has to get to Bernie. And he has to say,
that would be hilarious. I'd love for Bernie to see your shtick. He'd probably think it's funny.
No, well, look, I thought it was me when I was talking, and then of course it goes.
Well, I've heard he's kind of grumpy. He'd probably be like, that's fine.
So, without further ado, we are very pleased to welcome our esteemed guest this evening. He is one of the true grassroots, ground and pound activists in Broward County. Don't have a lot of them, but we have this guy. And he is running for the first time for state office. Couldn't be happier. He's somebody that we support unequivocally because he's on the mission that our channel is on, which is transforming politics.
Is that true? He hasn't run?
Not for state house.
Oh, okay. I thought he did run.
Yes, he did.
I thought he ran. What did he run for?
Oh, are you really that forgetful?
I can't
Stop
remember.
hitting the bong.
Do you know how many candidates district seats? And by the way, if you saw my reading list, I'm dealing with some very heavy, deep shit right now. Like I'm processing heavy. So no, I don't remember.
What tell him the warden. Stephen Meza, welcome to Generational Change.
Hey guys, good evening. How are you guys?
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Oh, I'm great. Another day in paradise. We're in Florida. We have a hurricane. We have elections going on, and all the best politics in America going on all at the same time. So we're living in the Sunshine State.
You know what I say? I say we're like people who do politics in Florida. It's like we're in a swamp in a swamp. And when I was driving back this summer from North Carolina, because I go to the mountains, and I was driving home, and it's like the humidity, and I'm like, and I'm going back to work, and I'm like, I'm literally driving back to a swamp in a swamp.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it feels sometimes, especially, just being involved local level, grassroots level. You see the politics very firsthand here in Florida. So we have I think, a unique perspective.
Okay. So remind me why can I not remember what you ran for when you were running before?
It has been 4 years since my last run. I did run for Florida. Yeah, I ran for state senate, District 33. That was the old seat. Now, Dr. Osgood is in that seat. I believe the district number is 32 now. So things have changed a lot, but I decided to come in, jump in, and actually be strategic this time. And I think this is the perfect opportunity. We have an open seat. Everybody's hungry for change and somebody young. So I'm hoping I can answer that call.
Where's this district? Like what's the perimeters of your district?
So there's several cities in the district. We have Deerfield Beach at the north, and then we go all the way down to Lauderdale Lakes, and then we have our neighbors between, like Oakland Park, and then we have Fort Lauderdale, of course, and then we have little cuts out of everything else.
Are you Wilton Manors?
No, so they actually cut that out of the district. So yeah,
Greg, they don't want working class and rich people mingling together. That's not how this works. Come on.
No, well, the truth is that Wilton Manors is a lot redder than people tend to think. Like, people make a lot of assumptions about Wilton Manors, like, oh, it's gay, it must be progressive. No, actually, it's full of older white men, dual income in houses. And they're older, and so a lot of people there probably vote their wallet or their whatever. I mean, it's not as progressive as people think in Wilton Manors. That's what I think.
It's not even a question of progressivism. It's a question of the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
And the district that you're running in is a very working class area.
Yes.
This state has been suffering mightily, as we have seen. Obviously, the governor has been front and center, not just with what happened, obviously tragically in Jacksonville the other day, but his governing tactics. And look, we have been of the mind that up until last November, he was basically making all the moves, if you will, like was one tracking for the White House. But his last, 10 months has been nothing short of a disaster.
Implosion.
And now with the pending hurricane that will hit in, basically the corner cut of this state, what do you call the panhandle? And when the regular comes together, what's that area called? Is that like a name?
To me, it's like an armpit. But
all right, so the armpit is going to get hit.
I don't know what you call it. I don't have a name for it. What do you call it?
Well, we'll take armpit. That works. So you're running to represent a district that clearly is having as much trouble as any when it comes to cost of living. You add in the insurance factor, many others. What is your platform, and what are, based on what you've observed, right off the bat, are the main concerns of the district you're running to represent?
So we have three main issues, and I think we've all been focusing at different parties. So I've decided to focus on party issues that can actually cross the aisle, right? So we're talking about housing, we're talking about the insurance, right? We're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about, and believe it or not, I thought this was surprising, even climate change and how they're spending money. They may not address it, but the fact that they're putting something behind it, I think shows that there's a lot of ways for us to kind of tackle different issues. Now, having my background being a legislative aide of municipal government, I could tell you the biggest thing I know within that district is a lot of them are condo owners. And not only are they getting hit with a lot of these exorbitant fees that the legislature put on them the last special session, they're also now having to deal with the high cost of living that we're seeing here with the inflation. So not only are we seeing insurance prices go up, we're also seeing just general services that I would think any condo association would need, right? So outside of just the housing factor, for sure, I want to talk more about infrastructure and what that looks like in terms of economic development. And you guys said it right. This is a very deep blue collar working community. And the one thing I kept hearing from those constituents was, when do we see money coming into the Black and brown neighborhoods to help us with our small business, to help us grow as a community and to build that how can I say, and instead of a bench, more of like they're trying to give out a branch. And I think that is the best part about even working in this district, just having some unique ideas. So I'm definitely going to try to focus on being able to work across the aisle, but I also want to focus on some of those progressive issues I think any and all Floridians could get behind.
That's a smart way. I mean, that's really smart, and not get stuck on the wedge things where we know where we are in the state of Florida. It's a losing battle where you guys are completely on defense. And I explain that to people, and there is a need for that, right? Somebody has to be on defense. But what you're talking about is the smartest thing, which is in order to go on offense and actually get anything done, it has to be issues that working people can all support, regardless of where they are on the level of social spectrum conservatism, right?
Right.
And that's a problem, because in this state, a lot of those issues they're lost as far as where we are with the numbers in the legislature. It is what it is. So the idea to get on issues that everyone can get behind is really smart. And I appreciate that, because I know that for the most part, when you're in Tallahassee, you're on defense.
Oh yeah, but and I want to talk about, even when you guys mentioned like the conservative population in Wilton Manors, it is true, but I think a lot of them do end up coming to Wilton Manors because those policies, again, are beneficial to everybody in that community, irregardless of policy ideas. So I think this is going to be the best approach. I know Democrats are in defense and they're trying to get all the best sound bites and make sure that their voices are heard. I mean, we're working with a supermajority, so I don't blame them, but I also know they're exhausted, and that defense has to be tiring knowing that you go up there trying to make change.
Yeah, I ask them always. That's like one of the key things I always ask our Tallahassee group, like when people are up there, like Marie and people like, know, how hard that is to always be just fighting against things like, for people's rights that we would have thought would have already been so secured. And those things are important. Like, we need people to be defending the trans community. We need people to be doing that, because I don't think people realize, as bad as it is, that it could be worse. And I don't think people really understand that, like, without the little bit of defense that we have, because I know there's people like Marie fighting the good fight, and people like Chev and people like that are in Tallahassee, but it could be worse. And I know that because I'm a native Floridian. So I don't think people realize that.
No, and you're right, because I think maybe a month ago I was speaking with Representative Bartleman, and I just was like, how is your mental health? And yeah. I could just see the relief on her face from being asked that, because you said it perfectly. Being on that defense, I could only imagine. And the way they described, just working in Tallahassee now, I think the best statement that I heard recently at the last session was because we can, right? And they're doing exactly that, because they can. They have the numbers. It doesn't matter whose idea it is. Yeah. So it's a lot happening, and I'm hoping Democrats can hold on, because I'm also seeing a lot of playmakers actually going to different seats. I'm seeing a lot of almost like hot potato and seat hopping, because they're trying to, I think, find the best area for them to make policy change. So I don't think people understand how discouraging Tallahassee is right now for Democrats. To go up there, you're getting beat up. So we're trying.
Yeah, I think you're in a good, like, I can see you being good for that. And yeah, I think it's something that's tiring after a while, and I think it gets very defeatist. But people who can do it, someone has to do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's bad. And we work on this whole concept of, and why is it so bad? And where did this all go wrong for Democrats? And why are we in this position that we're in Tallahassee? How did it get this bad? And we, of course, are dealing with some of those issues and trying to figure out, well, what can we do to create some semblance of actual Democratic resistance here that backs the people in Tallahassee? Because there really isn't. It's sad, really.
I think the hard thing for Democrats, especially in Florida, is that, we don't get the benefit of being progressive. It is stifling. And Jen, you having ran, how hard it is. You want to hold on to progressive ideals and values, but working in Florida politics, when you do that, you do hurt yourself in some respect. And, I wish we had the politics we did like in New York or in California, where people can really go door to door and like make change in just that respect. But I think right now we're just trying to get it all back together and show people we know what we're doing. So I even appreciate what you guys do, because I think this is a perfect example of how we create some of those resistance factors and how we start those conversations. And I think that's what makes our party great, because we can have these different factions, but they can all come together. So I'm trying to do what you're doing. I'm trying to bring everybody together, but it feels like I'm pulling teeth every day, and I can only imagine how you guys feel about it.
It's hard. It's hard. And I, as much as technically I am a Democrat, I'm registered as one because it's really the only way to participate here in politics. I'm not really with them. Like, I'm not somebody that's towing their party line. I don't agree with how they do things. I think they're feckless, especially in this state. Like, I have a lot of issues. So I don't line up with them because of any ideology. Not at this point. They don't do any, I haven't seen them do anything. Individual people, yes, like individual legislators that are up there, yes, those people are busting ass. That I know.
You know,
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about party support and really getting out in the community. And they are not getting support. More and more people are not registering as Democrats. Like, they're dwindling. And that's not what you guys need is base, right? You guys need support. That's their job. The party's job is to give you a base of support so that you could do your job. They are failing. That's the problem.
And you know, Jen, I had that sentiment, like, especially during COVID, because, you know, you do feel like some people do more than others. But I think that goes to show that there are actual activists who are legislators, and there are just people who want to play pretend. And we see it all the time, even with the Republican Party now. So I'm not mad at your opinion at all. If anything, I think we've all been there as Democrats at one point, but I think we all know that this is our party because we can have these conversations and not feel crazy about it. And we can actually figure out as a system, how are we going to collectively push an idea? You know, now I think all Democrats would appreciate, like, the Republican Party where, you know, they say something and everybody kind of follows suit, but is that a real democracy? So Jen, I want you to know I'm in this fight with you, and I love that me and you can go back and forth with it because I mean, that's what makes us able to have great conversations and think of great ideas.
At the end of the day, I know that you are about representing people. That's all. Sorry.
I'm speaking with Stephen Meza, running for Florida State House District 98, which is in Broward County, Florida. You know, one of the reasons why we have such a problem here in Florida when it comes to political participation is that it tends to skew towards a very older, more conservative demographic. You are a millennial. Oh, no, excuse me. You're Gen Z.
Are you Gen Z?
Yeah.
You are representing a generation that desperately needs representation. We have had an exceptional victory in the last election cycle, obviously with Maxwell Frost going to the United States Congress. Was there anything in particular that really inspired you to get involved? Because a lot of people who are between, you know, the ages of, you know, let's say 18 to 29 right now, you know, the ones that are really dealing with the most. But this is across technically 3 generations. You're Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X. We are all dealing with this significant problem right now of not having representation of by and for working people.
Yeah.
So what was it that was sort of the impetus for you to say, you know what, a lot of our generation is looking around for leaders to step up and fight on behalf of the issues that matter most to us. The heck with it, I'm going to go do it.
It was his high school.
I'm going to piggyback off of your statement, Peter, because not only I think do all of us want it, I've actually seen some reluctance from a lot of people in leadership in the party or community leaders or just people in the community themselves, and they are hungry to pass the baton. And I found that so fascinating because 4 years ago, it was kind of like you're knocking at the door and nobody's home. And now it's more like people are yelling at you to come in and come give us this product. And I think it's a good place for us as young people. And I don't know about any other young person's journey in government and politics, but for me, it was just the simple fact that I was starting, as I entered my adulthood career, right? You start noticing that, yeah, being a child is great because you were just completely ignorant to what was actually happening societally. So to kind of just see it happening, you know, if anything, I feel disheartened knowing that we have to start off so young in the process, because it just goes to show that there are so many issues that aren't being addressed for every and anybody. And I think that's horrible. The fact that nobody can get a seat at the table unless it's a majority. And I say that in the sense that there shouldn't just be one-offs of Gen Z people. There should be multiple Gen Z. Like, I would love to see the Republican Party have Gen Z. I have friends who are Republicans who are Gen Z, and they have very different point of views from the old Republican view. So
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
You know, to me, it just shows that it's not that we want to change, like, we don't want to reinvent the wheel, let me say. We're really just here to try to polish it up. And if we could get a chance, I think that would be my message to young people. You have a chance. You don't need that seat right now. The door is just wide open. People just want to see who's going to walk through it. And I think that's beautiful because we were fighting 4 years ago just for that.
Yeah, it's definitely shifted a little bit. I mean, there's definitely a little bit of like this changing of the guard vibe going on here, which I think is important. That's something where they tend to have not been great in the past, and I think that that's key. But someone like you it's like if more people like you were actually what was representing Florida's Democratic Party out there in the world, like if that was it, it would be a lot more enticing for people to be involved. So you are definitely the kind of candidate where it's like, oh, okay, that's cool. Yeah, I could get, with that. And we are seeing more people like that. But for a long time,
Hey, look, man, the best representative, in my humble opinion, in this state, without question, is Anna Eskamani. And we would love to be able to see you up in Tallahassee representing South Florida. She represents Central Florida. And of course, it'll be her last term in the House. I mean, talk about the best possible situation to basically be an apprentice for a representative who can, show you the ropes.
Anna's awesome.
It's crazy. You guys say that, and I've been telling myself this. I'm like, when I win this race, I have to get all the knowledge I can from her, because I don't think anybody in that state legislature or anybody in government can say that Anna Eskamani is not a stateswoman. And she is the perfect example of what you should be as a statesperson. And I just hope I can meet those strides. For example, I could only imagine how Maxwell Frost felt, meeting AOC. It's like, you get to get this worldview of knowledge firsthand and be successful at it. And that's the best part about it. So I'm hoping I could carry on her work. I hope I can make the rep who is now leaving the seat proud, and just carry on what's happening in the community, but do it better.
Who is that? Who's leaving?
Patricia Hawkins-Williams.
Okay. And so is there anybody else in this race right now?
So far there are.
And you don't have to name names. You don't have to name names.
I don't like to do free promo, but there are some names. I'm not worried at all. I think this is a good field. The people who I'm hearing at least sound like it's going to be some good competition. There will be good conversations happening. And maybe we will actually get to see an election that people are door knocking for their lives. And that's really what I want to see. I want to.
So there are people in your primary. You're saying there's people in the primary.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And that's just common sense.
And I'm sure by in a few months, I'll know everybody else that's in that and all of the nonsense that's going to go on with those shenanigans. Like, I'm sure it'll be crazy, but yeah, we like you.
Stephen, last question before you go. Obviously, one of the things that really does make a difference in politics, as one often talks about, is name recognition. That is a huge component in any race that you run in, but also experience. This is not your first time at the rodeo. You ran for state senate. Obviously, it's a much bigger district than what you're running in for now, which is state house. What was that experience like, and how do you believe that'll serve you well running again, in this case, for the state house in District 98?
What wasn't that experience like? You had COVID. You couldn't go door knocking. You had to find a way to communicate to voters. You had to learn social media in a new way. My first run was definitely a lot of mistakes, but it was so much learning, just because of all the other outside variables. We're not even going to talk about, and Jen, you've probably heard this, you have to kiss the ring kind of process in the party as well, just to get the backing. I had to go through that, and here we are still at the primary. My experience then and my experience now and my work experience, I think, is very different from the field, just for the fact that, one, I've ran a campaign, I've run winning campaigns, and I've actually come from a municipal legislative background. So we are implementing policy, we are writing actual ordinances, and we are telling our Broward legislative delegation, these are some of the ideas we'd like to see implemented at the state level. So I have a worldview of, what politics should be. But I think coming in with this experience, I want to shape just a little bit of, instead of what we need to do, what we should be doing. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like I did all the extra parts, right? What you need to do, as they say. Now I'm ready to do what I need to do to actually win this race.
Yeah, and just honestly, you keep hammering home about the economic issues, you'll be successful. Because the truth is, it's about housing, it's about insurance, it's about all of that. That is what is, people are really struggling. This, and come October, when is it that the student debt thing is happening? When
October
is it?
1st.
October 1st. Yeah. This is going to be a disaster of gargantuan proportions. Yep. And so when you're talking about, when you're talking local stuff and how expensive it is here and what we have with the unhoused community and all of it, you focus on that and keep it economic. You will be able to get people on your team that wouldn't necessarily always be on the Democrat teams. Keep it focused on it's the economy, stupid,
Yes. As cliche and silly
but
as
it's
that may
but
sound.
it's true. People are suffering, and when you connect with that, then that's how you get people.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's why I wanted to focus on issues I think we all talk about at the dinner table at night. I want to leave the national issues to the president. He's not taking trash on the street. And I'm pretty sure he's not too worried about our state laws the way our legislators have to be. So
yeah, keep it on that, because they're going to keep trying to distract you about the national nonsense. And I hate when people get into things that are way outside the scope of what the position that they're seeking. You don't need to be worrying about the war situations, right? Like, that's not on your plate. But your infrastructure is crumbling. You've got sewage in your streets when it rains really hard. And, there's a lot of issues that people are struggling with in your district that need to be dealt with. And that's important.
You're also an exceptional leader, a very powerful voice. I believe that a lot of people, especially in the two concurrent generations right now, will feel very inspired by somebody like you running with a much more visible profile. On top of that, there's a lot of swing seats that are in this state that could use a good boost from somebody who really knows how to rally people, whether it's in parts of Miami, parts of Orlando, parts of Jacksonville. There are going to be races that will be coming up after the primary in August where they are going to need help. And selling yourself as somebody who can help push swing candidates with a similar platform, like our friend Anthony Nieves, who should be in the State House right now up in Orlando.
He was a great
candidate. Be a great example of somebody who was somebody like you on the ground could really make a difference. So I think there's a lot of great things that you bring to the table. And I think as this campaign goes on over the next year, a lot of people are going to find out about that. And you have our support. So
hey, are you planning on running a service-based campaign? I'm a proponent of service-based campaigns. And I also think that that's the best way to contribute while you're running. And you will also learn what most people's needs are when you're actually serving the community. Just saying.
Jen, I love that you said that, because that's actually going to be some of the things we're doing. We're going to be doing the hood voter registration drives, and we're calling it just that. We're going to give the vibe and the ambiance. I want to make sure we're doing things that are culturally significant in the district. I think people are just so hungry to go back out after COVID, but they don't know how to do that. So what you're saying is exactly what I want to introduce, because that's how we build a base, and that's an active base. I don't want just a bunch of talking points and platitudes being spread. I want people to be able to share that this campaign was fun and it did things for our community in a way nobody could.
Yeah.
How can people reach you if they want to follow you on social media? Obviously, mezaforflorida.com is the website to check it out. Floor is yours before you go.
So my name is Steven Meza, 25. I am a first generation American, and I am here running to be your State House District Representative for District 98. If you would like to connect with us, all of our social media is at the Stephen Meza. You can find us there. You can follow us, have conversations with us. I promise you we respond. I have a great social media team. If you know Elijah Manley, he's pretty much always active and engaged. So he is my guy, and he will make sure that we're always communicating. Outside of that, my phone number is 954-288-2035. I know a lot of candidates don't give out their personal number. I would like to give that to you all.
No, it's cool.
Yeah.
954-288-2035. You can always call me if you have questions on policy or anything. And in addition to the fact that I do work in local government, please feel free to reach out if you ever need assistance. I'm grateful to do that for you guys. And that is me. And I thank you guys, Jen and Peter.
Absolutely.
I love your show, and I appreciate you guys for giving me the opportunity to come out. I love that you guys are supporting me, and I can't wait to see where we go with this in a year, and maybe I'll come back, and we're having a great time with progressives.
Oh, we'll definitely have you back, my
We'll
friend.
have you back.
Keep kicking butt and taking names. You're doing a great thing. Remember, it is service above self, and you embody that, and we're very grateful you came on tonight.
Thanks, Steven.
Bye, guys. Have a great evening.
We'll be in touch. A good guy, to say the least.
Such a nice boy.
And, of course, as a lot of people like to say, well, who's going to do it? Who's going to step up? Well, Steven is one of those guys who says, I've got a lot to say, a lot of things that I want to do, and I'm going to put myself out there to try to do it.
Who else is in that race?
I don't know.
I'm just curious.
I'm sure that we'll find out.
Yeah.
But, the thing about these open seats, as we often see, is that a lot of people will come out.
Oh, the vultures will come out. And it'll be people that didn't have the balls to challenge somebody in their seat.
Well, it all depends.
He did that.
Hold on a minute. It all depends on how that person is representing the district.
Right.
There are again, we're in a unique circumstance because we happen to have a very poor congressional representative. But there are a lot of people that will represent various districts. And the thing about, remember, the United States Congress is the only governing body in the U.S. that doesn't have term limits. It's the only one. The state house has term limits. The state senate has term limits. The governor's seat has term limits. So even if you are in a situation where you don't necessarily like the representative that is currently representing the district, you can always challenge that person, or eventually the opportunity will present itself where you can run for that seat when it's open. And that comes every, usually 8 years. But there's always circumstances where the representatives in question are not doing their job. And we've seen that many a times. But Stephen is somebody who has run for the state senate before.
Which is why when I said to you, he ran before, and you said, not for this, and you acted so like you couldn't believe I couldn't remember what he ran for. He ran for, I understand the difference between the state senate and the state house, but the point is he ran for a Tallahassee position, which is what I was thinking. Yes. You made it be like, how could you not remember what he, I'm like,
I'm sorry.
Do you know how many between the House districts, the Senate districts, the congressional, like seriously, I don't remember. And they're not, and he's not even in our district.
No, he's not, but he's definitely a friend, and we do appreciate what he's doing. He is on that mission to transform politics into service. And again, he is a much-needed voice in the youth movement, especially in a state where there are so few of them. And that's why Ann Escamani and Maxwell Frost in particular are two of the really, premier political leaders regardless of political party. Hats off to Maxwell this evening, doing a town hall with PDA in support of Medicare for All. Yeah, he may be standing there by himself right now, but you know what? At least he did it. And that will always inspire more and more people to say, I'm going to take up arms and I'm going to get out there.
What do you mean he stood by himself? There's people that
No, I'm saying that he was on that. Do me a favor. I'm just explaining that he was on the call tonight, and he was the only congressional member that was part of the call.
Okay.
Now, it doesn't mean that they didn't necessarily recruit other people to come on there, but the fact that he did go to one of the, the local groups really says a lot. And there are more people that need to be doing that. You can't run away from this. This whole idea that we have to be nice to Joe. We have to make sure that the Democrats don't take too many body blows. It's like, no, this is why people prefer the GOP to the Democrats, because whether you like the GOP's policies or not, they adhere to the will of their people that are asking for that. That's why they're adhering to Donald Trump. Not because they want to, but because that's where the people want them to go. In the Democratic Party, it's the complete opposite. And that's not politics. That's authoritarianism. And people are tired of it. You can't vote for these other people. You have to vote for who we say, otherwise you're going to get Donald Trump. That's fascism.
It's not working.
Nope. And it's not going to work, and it's going to keep getting worse. And there are major issues of the day. And for those of you who obviously are here because we were going to talk about a very important topic this evening as it relates to RFK, we get distracted by these issues that people think are of what really is of serious consequence. And yet the entire time, they're completely off base in terms of where they need to be. Where we need to be right now is focusing on the very conglomerate society that are forcing our economy literally into the ground.
Non-elected people that are basically controlling everything.
Yeah. And who bigger than BlackRock? BlackRock is the biggest asset managing corporation in the world with $9 trillion under management. Do you know how big that is in comparison to the world economy? They would be the fourth richest country on earth right now behind us, China, and Japan. That's how rich it is. And what are they doing? They're buying up all the homes in the United States. How do I know this? Because I'm in real estate. And I can assure you that they are planning to own more than half. At this point right now, the trajectory suggests that within 7 years, they will own 60% of the single-family homes in this country. Our country will collapse economically if that happens. People will never be able to build generational wealth, ever.
Well, that's the purpose. The purpose is you will all have nothing, and you will like it, and you will be served, and you will serve your lords.
Just as our friend of the show, Carol Roth, who, yes, is a Republican, even though she doesn't like to say that she is, but nevertheless, somebody who is on the political right has made very clear that you will own nothing and you will like it. And it's because of companies like BlackRock that are destroying our country. Now, why is it that no one except
ever talks about
ever
that?
talks about it?
Could it be that they're suckling at the teat?
Could very well be. But apparently there is one person who's running for president of the United States right now, although the Democratic Party would have you believe that this person is not running for president. Right
We'll
now.
talk about that too, because it bothers me to no end that they're not giving him security.
Colin, without further ado, please cue up the video. RFK is talking about this.
He's calling out
BlackRock to their face.
The what we call, it's part of, at this point, it's part of like the deep state we're talking about.
Yeah, this is definitely some serious business.
Yeah.
Very much.
When you have that much power.
Oh, power to actually move countries economically.
Well, that's the thing. It's problematic.
Very much so.
The book I'm listening to now is it's called American Exception, and it's extremely intense. It's very upsetting. There's some seriously bad things.
All right. I will play it.
The thing that kicked off more than any other thing the great prosperity in this country was the GI Bill and the bills after World War II that made it easy for GIs to buy houses, to get into houses with low mortgage payments. So what I'm going to do as soon as I get in there is I'm going to start working on the tax code to make it very, very unprofitable for these big companies to come in and buy, millions of houses. And they shouldn't be, our children should not have to compete against these giant, billion, and of course the way they do it is because they have better access to capital, because they have lower interest costs. So they of course can go and take all the land in our country. And by the way, there's now all kinds of articles that show that the best farmland in Europe is Ukraine. And our arrangement with Ukraine is we're going to give you all this money. You have to pay it back. And the way you pay it back is through austerity programs, beginning with something they call the land market, which forces all the farmers in Ukraine essentially to sell their land to BlackRock. So, the Ukrainian people, 400,000 of them have died to protect their land from the Russians. Their land is being taken from them by BlackRock. The system is rigged, and it's rigged. Thomas Jefferson's vision of our country was, he said, the only way democracy would survive is if it was based on widespread diverse ownership of land by tens of thousands of independent freeholds owned by families, each with a stake in our system. And we cannot afford to have a single mega corporation essentially own all of they're buying all the farmland too, to own all our single family homes, and our kids are having to compete against these behemoths because they have those low costs. I'm going to change the tax code to make it very, very difficult for them to compete with our children.
So there you go. And that is
him calling out BlackRock.
And no one else is doing this.
No.
And you're not going to see any other candidate, especially somebody like Vivek, who apparently is now becoming the darling replacement for Trump should he fall. And Trump is not going to say it. And you better believe Joe Biden is never going to say any such thing.
No. Well, no. I'm scared for RFK. Look, and again, he's not my candidate. I don't endorse him or whatever, but I do think he should be getting security. It bothers me immensely that Joe Biden refuses to give him security. Joe Biden has the authorization to grant security to RFK, and he refuses to do so.
Yes, and that is something that
I have a problem with
that. Whatever the motivations are, whether it's deliberate or it's simply haphazard on his part, there is no question that the President of the United States has the authority to issue Secret Service detail to whomever he gives discretion to. There is a reason he has given Secret Service detail to his son, Hunter, which in my humble opinion is ridiculous. But nevertheless, if you're going to give it to Hunter Biden, give it to RFK. Like, this is crazy. And everyone knows that he is a target.
Oh,
he's a Kennedy. For
I mean, it's like, I mean, I'm also I'm concerned for Cornell West, and
I would be concerned for him as well. The only difference between Cornell right now and RFK is that Cornell is not outwardly. I just like, as I said, only RFK is talking about BlackRock. Now, that doesn't mean that Dr. West is not going to eventually talk about it.
he talks about the structures of the whole thing.
100%.
That is
100%.
basically BlackRock is just one tentacle of what he talks about. So yeah, he does talk about the entire capitalist system crushing everybody. That's the premise of his entire campaign.
And here's another crossover. Good friend of the show, Metalopoly, who is on the political right. BlackRock and Vanguard should not even exist. I agree. They shouldn't. Private equity firms only exist to bundle upon bundle upon bundle rich people's money so they can control everything.
But what we were just talking about, Metalopoly, you'll be pleased to know then, I've seen a few things done, interviews done with people that are island people in Maui. And they're really coalescing together as an island, and they are going to stand firm. And they are, I mean, from some of the people I saw, they'll kill people before they'll give up their land.
That's also,
like they're
yeah,
not
that's,
going down
no.
with it. They will fight.
They will. And
a lot of people there don't even want to be a state.
Yeah, and that it's the similar sentiment of people who are in Puerto Rico, and they feel the same way.
Yeah, but they're not a state. Hawaii
That's what I'm
actually
saying.
is
That's one of the reasons they don't want to be a state.
Yeah.
They don't want to be controlled entirely by the U.S. government, which is what is going on right now. And listen, there's a lot of failures on the part of President Biden, but the fact that a state of emergency still has not been declared on the island of Maui, or even the whole state of Hawaii.
Well, but here's,
to make sure that they do not allow a systemic takeover of these people's land.
They need to put a moratorium on like any of that. But the people aren't going to tolerate there. I feel like they are getting themselves together and ready for a fight. But I would suggest everybody, Kim Iverson did a really good interview with a gentleman who lives in Maui. He's on the south part of the island as opposed to where Lahaina was on the west. And one of the things that they talked about is that they're really now suffering economically because everyone's telling people not to go to Maui, when in fact, other than the area around Lahaina, the entire island is open for business. And now you've got all these layoffs going on and all these serious issues. So I just want to say, like, and Kim made a very good point, which is it's kind of hard to not feel bad about going there on a vacation when you know that there's so many people suffering. But more and more people are getting laid off. All the hotel, like a whole bunch of hotels and restaurants just laid off all these local people. So even though Lahaina is in a very bad way, and we should definitely support them and do everything we can to support their fight against disgusting greed, we could still be supporting other people in Maui. That's what I'm saying. So I don't know that they want to be declared a total disaster. Like that's part of it too, is that now they're having economic repercussions.
And that is part and parcel when it's like dealing with a bull market versus a bear market or a stable market. There are times where you need the government and there are times where you don't need the government. Just like there are times to raise taxes and to lower taxes. This is one of those situations where the federal government absolutely needs to step in and help the people of Hawaii, particularly the people of Lahaina on the island of Maui. They are suffering. They are going to suffer for quite some time. The death toll is now approaching 120. There are still in excess of about 1,000 people that are not accounted for.
And at this point, unaccounted is presumed dead. At this point,
that's bad. And so the fact that there are these vultures that are allowed, and again, vulture capitalism, which is what we have. So when people who, and Stephen was bringing this up before about how there are a lot of good, like-minded people that happen to want to be in the GOP. That's because a lot of people that are young that want to be in the GOP are actually a supporter of a true free market capitalist system. And I can understand that, but we do not have that, not anything close to it.
No.
And the reason I support a hybrid system is because unless you have a mix of capitalism with socialism, it will inevitably lead to a vulture capitalist system, which is what we have now, which is in turn a form of fascism.
Y'all, we're there.
The corporate state owns our lives.
If we can't, we have to protect the people in Lahaina. Like that's really important from what is going to happen, because Lahaina is the original capital of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Like there's a lot of history there. And because of that, there's a lot of generations there that have been there since before it was a state. And the idea of somebody like BlackRock coming in there and taking what's theirs is just completely unacceptable. And this is where we want our government to step in. This is what I want my government to do. I don't want them policing the streets of regular people. I want them protecting people when corporate predators are going to be coming in and stealing their land.
Remember, the Democratic Party primary system is completely rigged because it has super delegates. At the end of the day, it has a fail-safe system that if any candidate were to ever get as close as Bernie Sanders got in 2016, they will simply do what is necessary for the interests of who runs the party financially. And BlackRock has a lot to do with that. And there is a website that you can look up that shows you who BlackRock donates to. Now, they do donate almost evenly to the Democrats and Republicans.
Absolutely.
Which means you hedge your bets. Just whichever side the pendulum's swinging.
That's most industries. That's the same as the military-industrial complex. Right. That's the same as big pharma. They're all pretty equal in terms of. The only one is, I think, a lot of Dems will say, well, I don't take NRA money. Kudos to you.
So when people are out there freaking out and saying the most disparaging things about RFK, because they don't like his position on vaccines, because they don't like his position on Israel. There are a lot of things that
I don't like his position on Israel.
I don't like his position on either, and I don't like his position on healthcare. He says everything right about healthcare except having a universal system.
Yeah, and we're not supporting. Like, it's not like we're proponents or endorsing RFK.
But the fact that he is the one person who is running for president saying we have to deal directly with BlackRock, this is what is destroying our future. How in the hell is he the only person who's saying this? And for the people that are trying to cut him up at the knees,
like, we need that voice, regardless of whether or not you would vote for him for president. It's an important voice to be heard. Correct. So the idea to stifle a voice that's speaking out against, I know, but to stifle a voice that's speaking out against, corporatism and empire is really just stupid and counterproductive.
It was like the time that he was at that private dinner in the Upper East Side of Manhattan, where he was talking about who was directly affected most by COVID, and that it had everything to do with different gene makeups. And people were turning this into he was a racist, he was an anti-Semite.
And he quoted a specific study, too. We don't need to go off on that whole tirade again. That was infuriating.
But my point is that pay attention to who's getting the short end of the stick. RFK gets the short end of the stick, and Cornel West really gets the short end of the stick. And why is it that they're getting the short end of the stick? Because they're a threat. The reason Marianne's not getting the short end of the stick is because she's not a threat, and she's made it clear that she will fall in line when it's all said and done. The other two are not falling in line. They're a threat. That's how it goes. And so the fact that RFK was out there saying what he was saying, that is some serious issue.
Well, what makes them the threat more so than how far they'll get is the message that they're saying. That is stuff that the Democrats would never want said out loud. Not. And RFK is saying the quiet part out loud, and Cornel West lives the quiet part out loud. So,
the philosophy of a mega corporation, a real world ruler like BlackRock. The attitude of the two major parties is simply this. Well, if we decide that we're going to say anything negative about them, they're just going to pour a whole bunch of money into the other party. And the other party will gladly accept it because it will help them win. Because for the overwhelming majority of people who are in elected office, from dog catcher all the way up to president of the United States, getting that sweet, sweet cash is the top priority, because winning re-election is the priority. That's why supporting people who are career politicians is a non-starter. At least it should be for most people.
Well, unless and this is where people argue, people that are career public servants. There are the occasional Bernie Sanders of the world, which is what people always point out when they don't like the idea of term limits from the left.
But that's also why the majority of people who are in elected office are more like Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi
by far.
than they are like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
One little thing about Nancy Pelosi I would like to point out, her handle on Twitter is still Speaker Pelosi.
Because guess who's still probably really in charge of the party?
Well, that's probably true, too.
They still refer to her as Madam Speaker, I'm sure.
Of course. That's a title that she will gleefully accept.
I loathe pomp and circumstance more than anything.
Yeah,
but that's a liberal, stupid shit.
That's a high-class liberal. The title is everything. It's absolutely.
I find it call me Esquire.
Yes, call me Esquire. Okay. And I know what that's in reference to. So ultimately, I do think that more and more people need to be talking about this. That's why we will make a clip about it. kudos to RFK for saying what is necessary. You know, the multinational corporations led by these private equity firms are literally destroying our economic future.
In the past couple of months, this man has called out BlackRock and the CIA. If that doesn't put a target on him, I don't know what does. And the fact that they won't give him security, it's almost like it's a little purposeful.
Well, as the Godfather would say, that if some unfortunate circumstance should befall upon him, that he should hang himself in his jail cell, but if he's struck by a bolt from lightning.
That's what they're hoping for.
Well, you know, whatever, but it's very clear. I think it's obvious. And you wanted to talk about the Jacksonville, the shooting story.
Right.
I know that this is, when you wanted to talk about this at first, I'm like, really? We're going to do another shooting story? Because the truth is they happen every day. In fact, multiple times a day in some cases, that I honestly, I am desensitized to it. I am. I hate that.
I want to give a tip of the hat to obviously Angie Nixon. She's been right on the front line. It is her district that was being represented where the shooting took place. You know, one of the things that I was noticing on social media that's very true, and you'll see this as it relates to, you know, what Vivek Ramaswamy was saying on TV, which is completely absurd, to say the least. There's two things that you have to consider, and we're not going to name this guy's name because that's what he wants.
No, don't.
Any shooter wants to know.
No,
Right.
yeah, no. We
But
don't
the
do
fact
that.
of the matter is, there are two things to consider about this shooter. Yes, he did target blacks for his mea culpa, but he didn't just target any blacks. He targeted poor working class blacks, and he went to a Dollar General to commit this crime. He didn't go to a nice part of town. He didn't go onto the college campus. He went to a part of town where people are desperately trying to survive. And there he thought, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to kill these people who are just trying to live and are of no consequence to me whatsoever. That's a tragedy within itself. But there's another tragedy that no one wants to talk about. And somebody brought this up. I'm not going to give that person any credit because I'm not a fan of their work, but I will agree with them on this point. The guy who committed this atrocity is not a white supremacist. That's not what this person is. This is, in many ways, what every, especially young, mass shooter looks like. Overweight, unattractive, socially awkward, not a lot going for them in life, especially with the opposite sex.
Some of them aren't overweight, but they have the crazy eyes and weird hair.
Neck beards.
Just all sorts of, people that are just.
People that you look at and you realize that in their mind, they are on the bottom rung of society, and maybe in a lot of ways they are. And maybe their desire to want to go on, whether it's because of their disgruntled circumstances, their escapism that they have to do on a regular basis, whether it's through video games, whether it's through the internet, 4chan, Reddit, different chats, things like that, means of figuring that the last, tool, the last resort is to pick up a weapon and kill. And this is a person that was Baker Acted 6 years ago.
So what is your point that in saying, okay, well, clearly he targeted a black community, but you're saying you don't see him as a white supremacist. You just see him as a sick individual.
I see him as a sick individual who, in his mind, and why do I think that guys like that attack people who are black? It's because deep down inside, they feel inferior and they see blacks, especially black men, as superior to them, whether in terms of physical prowess, sexual prowess, and potential economic prowess. They do see them as the bane of their existence. So what do? They pick up a weapon because they couldn't pick up their fists to actually deal with the problem.
But why is that not? I mean, he still sounds pretty white supremacist.
Oh, no, I'm saying that it's definitely racist. I'm not denying the racist element.
You just don't think he's part of like that movement.
No, I think it's like he puts the swastikas on his gun, and you have to have been your outlook on society is so black, no pun intended, but so ugly, and systematically not willing to deal with the realities of what's going on here. Society is falling apart, and it's been falling apart for some time. There's a reason why people are willing to pick up a weapon and start killing.
Well, and they're very available.
Very available.
They're very available here. That's just the reality. They're available, and we have a lot of very, very desperate people that are in a bad way for so many reasons. And this guy left information about why he picked that location. And I mean, clearly it's a racist person with racist crime, and clearly this is a very not well individual. But you know, I feel like we're still seeing this pretty regularly.
This is a regular occurrence because the anger at society is so deep. Now, I'm not saying...
Stop punching down and sideways, people. Stop kicking down.
And I'm not saying that if we lived in a social democracy that will cure all of our ills, even with all of the guns that we do have in society right now. But what I do believe is that if we did have a real system, a social safety net system, universal health care, living wage, tuition-free public college and trade schools where you can learn a craft.
Job guarantee.
Would that cure all of the violence?
Education for free.
That's what I said.
Oh, okay.
That will definitely solve a lot of these problems.
I think most crimes are crimes of poverty. Most people are struggling to exist. So if people are struggling to exist, you're going to have people that, let's say, everyday people, everybody has their limit where they can be pushed too far, where they're just going to lose their shit, right? So then if you take people that are suffering from what other traumas, generational traumas, that aren't starting with a whole clear head to begin with, and put those people in basically a pressure cooker of an economic situation, you're really asking for a disaster. And then, of course, weapons are everywhere. So, and then people are not addressing the root problem. And this is definitely a racist particular thing, but it could have just as easily been a school. It could have just as easily been, it didn't necessarily, that's sort of the side note, is that it's whether or not he's a white supremacist doesn't matter.
What matters is how we got there and how a lot of these guys get there. And people there is mental illness all throughout society. And a lot of times, I do believe that mental illness is brought on by your living conditions.
Oh, for sure.
And so
you get pushed to the edge.
Pushed to the edge. And so now what you have here is a person who's looking for an enemy, who's looking for something that they can hit, because they know they can't get in front of, let's say, the president or a senator or a multinational corporation board member. So they attack somebody that they think that they can hit. And if the bane of their existence in his sick mind is the Black community.
Someone got a job he wanted, or somebody, whatever the grudge is, whatever it is, it's a punching down.
And that is why, Angie Nixon says that when you push the rhetoric, like our governor has pushed, to basically, especially on the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington, and to push this rhetoric that somehow, again, slavery was good for the Black community, or we're just not going to learn about any of these things, or we're going to tell them to stop complaining and that this isn't a problem anymore. And for anybody who speaks up, is basically just being, and as Angie Nixon so eloquently put it, just an angry Black woman complaining about something.
I don't know what Vivek said.
Well,
I don't know what he said regarding Jacksonville. I knew there was something.
Well, now you're going to find out, because this is the asinine response that Vivek decided to say on CNN the other day.
What is your reaction to the shooting?
It is such a tragedy, and my heart goes out to those families. This should not be happening in the United States of America, and it is wrong. The reality is we have a mental health epidemic in this country. There are reports that this particular individual, the perpetrator, was indeed evaluated for mental health deficiencies as well. And I think we need to have the courage in this country to bring back a practice of putting back psychiatrically ill people who pose a risk to their communities into psychiatric institutions, not just drugging them up, but faith-based approaches and other approaches that fill our longing for purpose and meaning in this country. I think it is just a shame that we even have mass shootings like this, be it the one that happened in Florida, be it the recent one, the Nashville shooter in a Christian school, killing 6 in a school. We have to address that mental health epidemic, and we need leaders with the courage to do it. The reality is we've created such a racialized culture in this country in the last several years that right as the last few burning embers of racism were burning out, we have a culture in this country largely created by media and establishment and universities and politicians that throw kerosene on that racism. And I can think of no better way to fuel racism in this country than to take something away from other people on the basis of their skin color.
Boy, he butchered that.
Yeah.
That was ugly.
That was terrible.
That was ugly. So let's just lock up everybody in sanitariums. Let's lock up all the mentally ill people in sanitariums.
The fact that he brought religion into it.
Well, that's also,
dude,
faith-based approaches.
We need a faith-based approach. Yes, because thoughts and prayers really work.
Oh my goodness.
They really do.
That's the answer of someone who is very happy to take NRA money.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's the answer of
Should
someone
check
who's
that
not
one
even
out.
willing to say the word firearm. He didn't even mention it. It was a tragic event. He didn't even mention anything. He didn't mention the word gun. He didn't mention that. I don't think he even said shooting. He didn't mention anything. He just called it like this tragic event shouldn't happen. We need to deal with mental illness and lock up people that are mentally ill. And can we please, there is a big difference between people that are suffering from some sort of mental breakdown or a psychotic break, or people that are regular people that are just pushed to the edge, and people that suffer from things like depression and anxiety or any of those things where people might just lose it, versus people that are very chronic, maybe like that have bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, and those people that are generally nonviolent. And I think it's important for us to I don't like when we always pivot to mental illness as, oh, well, it's mental illness is the problem, because it really, first of all, it stigmatizes mental illness when in fact, most people that are mentally ill are not dangerous. So I don't like the idea of stigmatizing mental illness with, oh, well, they're mentally, anybody that wants to kill people and then kill themselves is obviously suffering in some sort of mental psychosis situation. But when we just use this phrase mental illness, because I know people that are bipolar or schizophrenic, and these are not dangerous people. And so I worry about over stigmatizing this concept of what mental illness is. Yeah, you're killing people. Something's not right.
Yeah. And Melopoly is saying, well, mental health crisis, if you don't see it, you're blind. No one is denying that there's a mental health crisis. And we will not name names, the people out there who are pretending that this is just a gun situation, and that those who say it's a mental health crisis are, again, those are people who are doing it for political clout. Bottom line.
There's two things. There is definitely a mental health crisis because people are pushed that are desperate and can barely survive.
And the people that are extremely privileged that talk like this are the ones who do not understand what it's like to be in a cycle of hell where the only way out is basically go out and blaze glory, which is how a lot of people feel.
Yeah. I just think we need to distinguish between people that have organic mental illnesses versus people that are just pushed to the brink.
Right.
And there is a difference. We're seeing huge increases of issues and people having problems and whatever, but also, again, for the most part, people that suffer from mental illnesses are not dangerous. So that is we have to be here. I don't like stigmatizing mental illness and saying everybody who does that has some mental illness, like as if that's just some big general category. So we should just lump all the mentally ill people together, Vivek, right, and just lock them up. We should just lock them all up.
And on top of everything else, the young man who committed this heinous crime, he purchased his firearms legally, even though he was Baker Acted in 2017. Let me tell you something. When you get Baker Acted, there has to be, if you're not going to ban a person's ability to purchase a firearm, then there has to be some type of a ban period where if you are going to be eligible, especially if you've been Baker Acted, the ability to purchase a firearm has to come with some type of not only a substantial background check, but a mental health screening. I guarantee you, if a real mental health screening was available to somebody like this guy, he probably wouldn't have been able to get a gun. But we make weapons in this country, and it is a multi-billion-dollar profit business.
Yeah, it's huge.
Per year.
People, it's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
It's anybody who's still fighting on the we've just got to ban the weapons kind of front. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I don't have weapons. I don't want weapons. I'd love to live in that world. I really would. I'd be happy there. It would be fine with me, but it's never going to happen. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
That's all we make in this country is weapons and war machines. And that's what we make in this country. So the idea of shutting down that is just absurd.
And of course, maybe the worst thing about what Vivek said is just emblematic of what the real problem is here. He's not identifying the core issue of economic anxiety and lack of a social safety net, which drives people insane and drives people to violence. And there's a lot of different reasons as to that case. But Vivek is not out there advocating for any major economic changes.
No, lock him up.
Working people.
But, and a lot of this is also what we're referring to as mental illness, a lot of it is what's really about being disconnected from community and just being isolated and people having no interconnections with people. And we have like a whole generation that only interact online. And there's just a lot of stuff that is causing increases in depression and anxiety and suicides among young people. Like this is all actually happening. There is a rise in mental illness. That is all happening. But most of those people aren't violent, right? So when we just say mental illness is the problem, no, it's a problem. I mean, I'm sure people with mental illness would love the support and thinking people actually care about their well-being, but you're not saying that. What you're saying is that they're the problem. And the people with mental illness are not the problem. That's what I'm saying. That's not the problem. Violent people is the problem. Now, not everybody that's, violent necessarily has an official mental illness, but I venture to say that people who are killing people have something going on.
Not only that, but there is, we talked about this the other day, there is really a lack of recognition for what narcissistic personality disorder actually represents. Now, not everyone, or frankly, probably the overwhelming majority of people with narcissistic personality disorder are never going to be violent against people, but you better believe that a lot of them will be.
It's an epidemic too, by the way.
That's a real problem.
The narcissism is an epidemic.
A sense of self-importance, and it's a lot easier when you're in a position of authority, let's say in an elected position, where you have the ability to harm somebody through a legal maneuver, rather than, let's say, picking up a gun and killing somebody. There's a lot of different ways that this works, but there is no question that these particular problems in society get exacerbated. And yes, there are a lot of grifting individuals who are just looking at this as a white man killing a black person without actually digging deep into why these things are actually happening, why it's so much easier to extol the racist virtue onto somebody else because you believe that you're better, or you hate them because you think they're better. Whatever that is, the society as a whole has fallen apart, which is why this is happening all the time now. Yeah, this isn't a one-off incident. Until people are willing to really peel the onion back and admit that this system is broken and that the people who are running it are completely bought and paid for by corporate power that have allowed this to happen, also known as corporate fascism, which is what we have, there will be no going back. There will be more shootings, there will be more division, and this society will continue to sink into the abyss, and we are not coming back from it.
We're all going to die! I feel like Jennifer Lawrence and Oh My God.
Yeah.
But, it's interesting because people, I would love to know regarding the amount of people that are, really fixated on the race-based nature of this shooting, which, don't get me wrong, it sounds racist as hell. I mean, that's exactly what it sounds like to me. But the bigger issue, people, if you're really concerned with racism, and I'm just curious, how many of you people that are so concerned with the race-based nature of the shooting are concerned with the baseline systemic racism that put that community into such a subjugated position in the first place as to that is who he was able to kick down to, right? Like the bigger issue of systemic racism is why is that Black community so in such a bad way that's who he could kick down to. That's the bigger race issue. Not about one guy who has a swastika on his weapon, who's clearly not well and out doing things because he's just desperate or whatever. The issue is, why are there so many systemically abused people in vulnerable communities? That's the bigger question.
On Thursday, we're going to be speaking with friend of the show, Ryan Grimm, who is going to be coming on to talk about his book, as it relates to the issues within the political left movement in this country.
It's called we've got people.
And we do have people. We just don't have any cohesiveness.
We can't get out of our own way.
And that's a big problem. And he's going to come on here to talk about it. And while there are people who do not necessarily agree with Ryan's methods, I got to tell you, for somebody who is a real player along the Beltway, it's about as good as it's going to get. So having a relationship with somebody like him is very important to understand what really goes on the Hill. So that is what's in store for
Ryan's
Thursday.
a good guy.
Yes.
He is. He's a good guy. He is. And again, people love to talk shit about somebody because they don't agree with this or that or the other.
And I have to confirm, but I believe that we'll be going on with Ryan at 8 o'clock on Thursday. I'm pretty sure that that's the time we're going on.
Okay.
Which is more convenient for him anyway. He's a family man. He's
got littles.
He is literally a guy. If he told me he goes to sleep at 10 o'clock every night.
Well, yeah, but he also probably gets up at like 4 a.m.
Oh, sure.
He's one of those people that probably have, and especially when you're like a news person and you're getting up and whatever. But he's got little ones.
Very little.
Yeah.
Again, guys, if you haven't currently, please head over to patreon.com/generational change. $5 a month.
Seriously, $5 a month helps us a lot.
Really help us a lot, especially for a channel that's been demonetized for no reason. Don't know why.
Oh, I know why.
Well, yeah, but
Marsha.
But it was just we're political prisoners, not like Donald Trump.
I am so onto her. It's so funny to me.
I will be watching.
I am so onto her. Well, because it's so like I know what I'm dealing with here.
Yes.
I'm dealing with basically an adult. It's like Vivek assault. I'm dealing with a Vivek assault situation here in this person. And that is how it feels like a child that just is so entitled and just cannot fathom not getting their way.
Well,
I'm fighting
imagine
Vivek assault.
how much more interesting it could get down the road. You guys have been great tonight. The chat has been very lively. We're extremely grateful. Chris Garrett, Henry Kajua, Off the Rails, Ray J, Mario, Metalopoli, Carniverde.
We appreciate
every one of you. It really means a lot. Double K, we saw that you came in earlier. And thank you so much. I think you did say that you went over to Cash App. So
we appreciate it. We're all sorts of demonetized.
Yes.
It's happened to really good people. I kind of feel proud about it a little bit because we're really in decent company. A lot of good people have been demonetized for periods.
Hey, clearly we're doing something right if they want to come after us that hard. So
that's how I know that's how I know certain people are watching.
Smash the like button, share, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. Check out the clips. Got some really good ones and our shorts. Make sure to click the bell. Maybe chip in a little, become a YouTube member.
We can't do that now.
Oh, right. Yeah, no YouTube member. Sorry. Anyway, Cash App or Patreon. We appreciate it very much. We'll see you Thursday.